All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to New Snark. This came across my Twitter feed, and I wanted to talk about it. The red-headed libertarian, who is obviously a libertarian and presumably has red hair, posted, "Probably the most important story happening right now has gotten virtually no attention at all, so let's give it some attention." And then she goes on to talk about how all these Middle Eastern countries who up until recently didn't like each other, hell, they probably still don't like each other, are forming deals thanks to China. And we all know that China's trying to pursue their One Belt, One Road initiative. They're trying to make deals. They're trying to form a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine, which I don't think that's actually going to happen. But they're brokering, trying to broker a peace deal between between all these Middle Eastern countries who all conveniently make a lot of oil. And they're trying to get them to join the BRICS system, the BRICS alliance, which involves Brazil and Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which, I mean, South Africa doesn't really, I don't think South Africa produces any oil. But the big things are, Russia makes a lot of natural resources that China needs. India has a huge population and, very educated population. They do a lot of tech stuff. And up until recently, China and India didn't really get along that well. They're trying to broker deals with Turkey. Recently, when Biden went down to Saudi Arabia, he got kind of shunned. Or maybe he was just trying to make a phone call. But, Saudi used to be real tight with us, mainly because we kept the royal family in power. But if they can work out a similar security agreement with China and Russia, why do they need us? Go back to the oil embargoes in the 1970s and all that. A lot of this is blowback from a lot of the sanctions and stuff that we've been doing. I talked about this about a year ago or so, saying that kicking Russia off the SWIFT system was going to be a really bad idea for us. And this is why. Ignoring anything that Russia may have done badly that we don't like, the US dollar is still, at least for the time being, the reserve currency of the world. That gives us a very special responsibility, as well as it allows us to print endless amounts of money to fuel our military endeavors, all of our welfare spending, all the other BS that they do in Washington, D.C. It basically lets us run a $31 trillion debt that would crush any other country. And if we lose the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency, it's going to crush us. China and Russia, to some extent, have been talking about trying to break the U.S. dollar for a long time. Certainly Russia's been wanting to do that ever since the sanctions in, 2015, after the Euromaidan affair and all that stuff. And China has been trying to reestablish themselves as a dominant partner in world commerce. Up until recently, they were sort of the junior partner manufacturing place that was dependent on the U.S. Now they're trying to establish themselves as basically the guys calling the shots. And they've always been historically a mercantile country. And so, with the sanctions, people have been trading oil in rubles and other currencies because we blocked it from the dollar. Nobody's not buying Russian oil. Russia's selling it to India, which is then selling it to Europe, or they're selling it through Greece or any number of other countries that don't produce oil. Sorry, but India doesn't produce a lot of oil. How come they're selling so much oil to everybody? And so basically the U.S. is going to get left out. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to squeeze us out. And China's trying to become the economically dominant partner. And all this has sort of been culminating really since the Afghanistan screw up, when we really botched our withdrawal from Afghanistan. It showed that people don't really have to be afraid of the U.S. anymore, because we couldn't hold it against a third world country. And regardless of who's winning in Ukraine, and there's legitimate debate about that, the Russians have proven they can at least hold up and at least hold their own against a NATO proxy army. The Ukrainians are a NATO proxy army. We've armed them, we've trained them. They're performing a lot better than people would have thought. Unless the U.S. has a crushing victory very quickly, like we did in Iraq, or in Libya, any of these places, when we took out those governments, it just shows that people can resist the U.S. military might, which we're not really we're a military power because of our Navy and our Air Force, but our Army's not that big, in the grand scheme of things. We've got an expeditionary force, but we're not really designed for these massive conflicts like what's going on in Ukraine. So as people start to doubt whether we can hold our own against these rising powers, that's putting a few cracks in our dominance. And as we confiscate our adversaries' money, doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. That's completely irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, and the Russians are making the argument, look, if they can take our money, they can take yours. Don't keep your money in U.S. dollars. And a lot of these other countries are starting to diversify their holdings. So what happens if this succeeds? What happens if the U.S. dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency? Well, the inflation that we're seeing right now, which is totally not 8%, it's closer to 20-25%, that's just going to go up. Look at some of these countries that have printed oodles of money but weren't the world's reserve currency. They had inflation rates of 1,000%. I don't know if it's going to get that bad here, but it could. So this is actually really bad. And we have all this political theater going on, like all of this, brouhaha about Trump getting arrested or not getting arrested or whatever's going on. And, the Chinese spy balloons and, finding classified documents in Biden's garage, or whether Hunter did whatever the hell it is that he did, or, whether Trump did weird Trump things. All of this stuff is a distraction from the biggest problem that we have. The global banking collapse, that's really just a symptom of our deeper problems. And the deeper problems are that we are printing an awful lot of money. We're spending way more money than we make as a nation. And it's all a big Ponzi scheme. The wealthy elites, our ruling elites, can essentially borrow free money from the Federal Reserve, use it to buy assets. They print up a lot of money so that inflation causes the dollar to become worth less and less, while the assets they bought maintain their value. And then when they pay back these low interest rates loans, they're paying it back with money that's worth less than when they borrowed it. And so they're essentially gaining wealth for free, while the average American is getting screwed. And that's already happening while the US dollar is still dominant. And it's just going to happen even faster afterwards. They're gambling on a global collapse, or at least a collapse of the current world order. We saw this during COVID, when you had the largest wealth transfer in human history from the poor and middle class to the mega wealthy. So I think that the guys on top know what's happening. They probably don't know how to stop it. They may not care because they're busy getting rich. And the rest of us are going to get screwed. Now, how do you protect against this? Well, that's tough, because there's not really much that you or I could do to prevent it. We could vote all these jerks out of office, but they'll just get replaced by more jerks. And let's be real, the Republicans aren't that much better at this than the Democrats are. They're all spending piles of money that we can't afford. They're all pissing off all these other countries that we're a lot more dependent on than we want to admit. COVID revealed that we're super dependent on China. And When Biden started cutting back our oil producing, it revealed that we're really dependent on Saudi Arabia and some of these other OPEC countries, or OPEC plus, if you want to include OPEC plus Venezuela and Russia and some of these others. And these guys don't all like us that much. I mean, even though Saudi Arabia has supposedly been our buddy for at least 40 years, as long as I've been around, they really don't like us that much. I mean, they're using us. I mean, we're using them too. So there's not really a good solution. I think inflation's going to continue, and you're going to have to prepare yourself against that. Be as self-sufficient as possible. Have employment or be involved in industries where you can raise your prices to correlate with the rising inflation costs. And and have your assets stashed away in something that will retain its value. Dad has a book on the subject. I can put a link in the description below. So this is really bad. And the biggest thing we have to do is we have to wake up to the fact that we're being lied to constantly. All this drama that we're facing, whether it's the Trump versus Biden stuff, or the Trump versus DeSantis stuff, or the racism stuff, or the January 6th stuff, or the grooming or LGBTQ whatever stuff. All of this stuff is a distraction to get the American people to fight with each other, so that we're too busy to realize that we're all getting screwed by the same group of people. There's a reason they call it the Uniparty. These guys are all getting rich together. So people need to wake up and realize, hey, our money is disappearing. And we're not as dominant as we think we are. You're certainly not as dominant as we once were. And this whole idea that, wars improved the economy because look how our economy improved after World War II, that's kind of a load of crap. I mean, the reason we were so dominant after World War II was everybody else's manufacturing capacity got destroyed. And even before World War II, we outproduced everybody in the world combined. So nowadays we don't. China has a bigger manufacturing capacity than we do because we sent all of our stuff to China. Hell, Russia has, on a practical sense, in a military manufacturing level, they're probably, in the ballpark of what we can do. We're probably bigger manufacturing-wise on a military level, but probably not by as much as we think. And if all of these countries in the world, India is huge. I have no idea how much they manufacture, but they've got a huge population. I mean, hell, India and China together probably make up, a third of the world's population? If we scroll down, her post, these countries all make up half the global population. And we're going to get left out of it. And she's probably right. I mean, who doesn't want to go stick it to the U.S.? So, I would start thinking very carefully about what's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be a big and sudden crash. I think it's going to be a more of a slow descent. But I think you're going to see inflation continue to get worse. And I think you're going to see prices continue to go up. We're probably going to continue selling out our country to China and our foreign adversaries because most of our politicians are at least influenced to some degree by foreign money. I've seen reports where as much as 75% of our politicians have indirectly received money from China or some form or another. And we know that Saudi is tossing in money. Europe's probably going to get screwed with us. So start thinking about how you can be more self-sufficient. if you have money right now, you should probably be looking at ways to fortify it against inflation. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. Dad has a book that talks about it, but make sure you have assets that will gain value in inflation. Because if they manage to displace the U.S. dollar as the dominant world currency, I think Western Europe will still use the dollar, North America will still use the dollar. But, China's been making a play for South America. They're definitely making a play for Africa because of all the natural resources. We could find ourselves in a situation where we've got North America and Western Europe versus everybody else. I mean, we'll probably keep Australia as an ally. But that could be a very uncomfortable situation for us. And this is sort of the darkest thing that I've seen in a long time. And I've been warning about it for a while. The threat of sanctions is a lot scarier than the reality of sanctions. And Russia's learning that. We hit them really hard with sanctions in 2015. The current batch of sanctions, at least according to my Russian friends that I talked to, it's not hurting them. It's, if nothing else, it's only hurting the people who didn't like Putin to begin with, but all the Putin supporters, they're doing fine. They've just shifted to selling to China and all these Asian countries. And this is the problem with America right now. Up until recently, we had a good understanding that soft power and soft influence and the fear of what we were capable of, that was how we influenced the world. But once we started getting into direct confrontations, especially with people who had the means to resist us, we didn't look so tough anymore. And once we started screwing over our trading partners and our allies, that made us an untrustworthy partner. And once we started stealing our adversaries' money, whether justified or not, it doesn't matter. If you do something bad and the bank seizes your money, you're not going to put money in the bank anymore, and you're going to tell your friends. And your friends are going to be like, maybe I shouldn't put my money in the bank either, because if they can seize this guy's money, they can seize my money. And that's basically what happened. So we'll see how this goes. I don't think that our current administration is going to try and stop this. I don't think it's in their agenda. And if the Republicans get in, I don't think they're going to try and stop it either, because, look, let's face it, most of them are on the Chinese payroll too. So get ready for some more inflation. I think that's what's coming. And good luck. Don't lose hope. Just be conscientious about it. Be careful about it. And we'll get through it. I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. I hope you like this new format where I'm basically just live streaming. It makes it a lot easier because I don't have to bother editing videos or uploading them. I just stream it straight to YouTube, and then YouTube automatically copies it to Rumble and BitChute. And so we'll see how this goes. I'll still probably make make some videos with more effort, where I'll take the time to edit and make them look good. But as far as an easy format where I can just record something when I have a thought, this is sort of an easier format. So we'll see if people like this. Well, everybody have a good night or a good morning, depending on what time you're watching this video. Good afternoon. And I will see everybody next time. Goodbye.